Narrator. There is a sealed medical file from 1991 that has circulated quietly among cardiologists for decades. It documents the case of an 88-year-old man living in a nursing home in Connecticut who defied every rule written in cardiology textbooks. This man consumed 25 soft-boiled eggs every single day for over 15 years. That is approximately 175 eggs per week, translating to roughly 9,000 eggs per year. His daily cholesterol intake was around 2,000 milligrams, a number so astronomically high that modern dietary guidelines would classify it as a form of self-harm. When researchers finally convinced him to undergo a full cardiovascular workup, they brought in specialists from 3 different hospitals. They expected to document a catastrophe: blocked arteries, an enlarged heart struggling to pump sludge-like blood, and a liver drowning in its own waste. Instead, what they found was so medically perplexing that the lead researcher reportedly asked for the blood samples to be retested 3 times. His arteries were pristine. His cholesterol levels were within normal range. His liver enzymes showed no signs of distress. This wasn't just an anomaly, it was a biological impossibility, according to everything the medical establishment had taught for half a century. But before you interpret this as permission to raid your refrigerator, you need to understand that this man might have been a genetic unicorn, and trying to replicate his diet could turn your body into a battlefield. Let's start with the immediate aftermath of swallowing 10 whole eggs in one sitting. The average large egg contains about 6 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat. 10 eggs means 60 grams of protein and 50 grams of fat hitting your stomach at once. Your stomach immediately releases a flood of hydrochloric acid and pepsin to break down this dense mass. For the first 30 minutes, you feel satisfied, almost unnaturally full. This is because eggs trigger the release of multiple satiety hormones, including cholecystokinin and peptide YY. These hormones send signals to your brain that say stop eating. But while your brain is getting the message, your digestive tract is entering a state of chaos. The sheer volume of sulfur-containing amino acids, particularly methionine and cysteine, begins to overwhelm your gut bacteria. If your microbiome isn't adapted to this kind of protein load, the bacteria start producing hydrogen sulfide gas as a byproduct of fermentation. This isn't just uncomfortable bloating, it's a toxic gas that, in high concentrations, can damage the lining of your intestines. People who suddenly switch to extreme egg diets often report violent cramping and digestive distress that lasts for days. Your body is literally in shock. By the time these nutrients reach your small intestine, something remarkable begins to happen. The cholesterol and fats are packaged into microscopic delivery vehicles called chylomicrons. These particles transport the dietary fats through your lymphatic system and eventually into your bloodstream. Here is where the old science got it catastrophically wrong. For decades, we were told that eating cholesterol directly raises your cholesterol, like pouring oil into a machine. The reality is far more complex and elegant. Your liver is constantly monitoring the cholesterol levels in your blood. When it detects a surge from dietary sources, it activates a feedback mechanism involving a protein called HMG-CoA reductase. This protein is responsible for your body's internal cholesterol production. When you eat those 10 eggs, your liver essentially says, "We have enough cholesterol coming in from food, so I'll turn down the factory." For most people, this internal regulation works beautifully. Your total cholesterol might spike temporarily after the meal, but within hours it normalizes as your liver compensates. This is why the 88-year-old man's blood work looked normal, despite eating a diet that should have destroyed him. But here's the terrifying part that the carnivore diet evangelists conveniently leave out. Roughly 25 to 30% of the population are what researchers call hyper-responders. These individuals have a genetic variation that makes their liver less responsive to dietary cholesterol. When they eat 10 eggs, their liver doesn't turn down its own production fast enough, or at all. The result is a dangerous accumulation of LDL cholesterol particles in the bloodstream. These particles can become oxidized, turning them into a form that promotes inflammation and plaque buildup in the arteries. If you are a hyper-responder and you don't know it, eating 10 eggs a day isn't biohacking. It's playing Russian roulette with your cardiovascular system. The only way to know if you fall into this category is through expensive genetic testing or by monitoring your blood work obsessively while experimenting with your diet. Most people skip the step and learn the hard way when they end up in an emergency room at age 35 with chest pains. Now let's talk about what happens to your brain during this process, because this is where things get even stranger. Eggs are one of the richest dietary sources of choline, a nutrient that most people have never even heard of. Choline is a precursor to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for memory, focus, and muscle control. When you consume 10 eggs, you are flooding your system with approximately 1,400 milligrams of choline. For context, the recommended daily intake is only around 550 milligrams for men and 425 milligrams for women. In the short term, this massive dose can make you feel incredibly sharp and focused. Some people report a cognitive clarity they have never experienced before. But there is a dark metabolic pathway that activates when you consume this much choline, especially if your gut bacteria are out of balance. Certain strains of bacteria convert choline into a compound called trimethylamine, which then travels to your liver and gets oxidized into trimethylamine and oxide, or TMAO. Multiple studies have linked elevated TMAO levels to increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and blood clots. It's a silent killer because you feel fine while it's happening. Your cholesterol can look perfect on paper, but your blood is slowly becoming sticky and prone to dangerous clotting events. The TMAO story gets even more unsettling when you look at the research from Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Stanley Hazen, a leading cardiologist, has spent years studying this compound. His research suggests that people with high TMAO levels have a significantly elevated risk of major cardiac events independent of traditional risk factors like cholesterol or blood pressure. What is truly disturbing is that the amount of TMAO you produce from the same amount of choline varies wildly from person to person. It all depends on the composition of your gut microbiome. If you have a lot of bacteria that produce TMA, you are in trouble. If your gut is dominated by different strains, you might be fine. This means that two people can eat the exact same diet of 10 eggs per day, and one person thrives while the other is silently building a time bomb in their arteries. There is no way to predict this without testing your blood after weeks of the diet, and by then, the damage might already be done. Let's pivot to the kidneys, because this is where the bodybuilding community has been quietly suffering in silence. When you consume 60 grams of protein from eggs in one meal, your kidneys have to filter out all the nitrogen waste products created during protein metabolism. This waste is packaged into urea and excreted through your urine. In a healthy person eating a moderate amount of protein, this process is effortless. But when you are slamming down 10 eggs every single day for months or years, your kidneys enter a state called hyperfiltration. They are working at maximum capacity under high pressure constantly. Think of it like running a car engine at redline RPM for hours on end. Sure, the engine can handle it for a while, but eventually components start to wear down. We are seeing an alarming rise in kidney stones and early-stage kidney disease in young men who follow extreme high-protein diets. The stones themselves are often composed of calcium oxalate or uric acid, which both increase when protein intake is excessive and hydration is inadequate. The pain of passing a kidney stone has been compared to childbirth, and some of these stones grow so large they require surgical intervention. This is the price some people pay for chasing the dream of unlimited muscle growth.
There's also a phenomenon that almost nobody discusses: biotin deficiency caused by raw egg whites. The egg white contains a glycoprotein called avidin, which binds to biotin, a B vitamin essential for energy metabolism, skin health, and neurological function, and prevents its absorption in the gut. If you are eating 10 cooked eggs, this is not a concern because heat denatures the avidin. But there is a subset of extreme dieters and old-school bodybuilders who consume raw eggs, believing they preserve more nutrients. These individuals are unknowingly creating a biotin deficiency over time. The symptoms are insidious. Hair starts thinning and falling out, skin develops a scaly red rash, and neurological issues like depression and numbness in the extremities begin to appear. By the time they realize something is wrong, they have been damaging their body for months. It's a cruel irony, eating what they believe is a superfood while simultaneously starving themselves of an essential vitamin. We also need to examine the historical context of why eggs were vilified in the first place, because this is one of the greatest nutritional con jobs of the 20th century. In the 1960s, a scientist named Ansel Keys published his famous 7 countries study, which claimed to show a direct link between saturated fat intake and heart disease. This study became the foundation for decades of dietary policy, including the demonization of eggs. But what most people don't know is that Keys cherry-picked his data. He had access to data from 22 countries, but he only included the 7 that supported his hypothesis. If he had included all the data, the correlation would have disappeared. Around the same time, the sugar industry was quietly funding research to shift the blame for heart disease away from sugar and onto fat and cholesterol. Internal documents released years later revealed that sugar companies paid Harvard scientists to downplay the role of sugar in heart disease and to point the finger at saturated fat instead. Eggs, with their high cholesterol content, became an easy target. For 50 years, doctors told patients to limit eggs to 2 or 3 per week or to throw away the yolks and only eat the whites. Entire generations grew up believing that the egg yolk was a poison. But let's look at the populations who never bought into this fear. In Japan, eggs are consumed daily, often raw over rice. The Japanese have one of the longest life expectancies in the world and relatively low rates of heart disease. In Greece, particularly on the island of Ikaria, one of the world's blue zones, where people routinely live past 100, eggs are a dietary staple. These populations didn't develop heart disease epidemics from eating eggs. In fact, researchers studying these long-lived populations found that moderate egg consumption was associated with better overall health outcomes. The difference might lie in what these populations eat alongside the eggs. In Japan and Greece, eggs are consumed with vegetables, fermented foods, olive oil, and fish. In America, eggs are often served with processed bacon, hash browns cooked in inflammatory seed oils, and white toast slathered in margarine. When researchers study egg eaters in America who have health problems, they rarely account for these confounding variables. The egg gets blamed for the damage caused by the processed garbage on the rest of the plate. There is also the uncomfortable truth about egg quality that the fitness influencers never mention. A commercially farmed egg from a chicken kept in a tiny cage under constant artificial light and fed a diet of genetically modified corn and soy is not the same food as an egg from a pasture-raised hen that eats insects, worms, and greens. The nutritional profile is radically different. Pasture-raised eggs have significantly higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin E, and beta-carotene. They also have a better omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which is crucial for controlling inflammation. Factory-farmed eggs are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids from the cheap feed, and these fats promote inflammation when consumed in excess. The chickens themselves are often in such poor health, living in such stressful conditions, that their stress hormones end up concentrated in the egg. When you eat 10 factory-farmed eggs a day, you are not just eating protein and fat, you are consuming a concentrated dose of industrial stress and inflammation. This might explain why some people report feeling terrible on high egg diets while others feel amazing. The source matters more than anyone wants to admit. So, what is the final verdict? Is eating 10 eggs a day a shortcut to optimal health or a fast track to the hospital? The answer is maddeningly complex. It depends. It depends on your genetics, your gut microbiome, the quality of the eggs, what else you eat, how much water you drink, and how much you move. For the 88-year-old man in the nursing home, his unique biology allowed him to thrive on a diet that would destroy most people. For someone with the hyper-responder gene, eating 10 eggs a day could mean a heart attack before age 40. For someone with an imbalanced gut microbiome, it could mean dangerously elevated TMAO levels and increased clotting risk. The egg is not inherently good or evil. It is a powerful biological tool that demands respect and self-awareness. The most disturbing realization is not about the egg itself. It is about how easily we were manipulated into fearing one of nature's most complete foods while sugar and processed grains were given a free pass for decades. Maybe the real toxicity was never in the yolk. Maybe it was in the lies we were told all along.